Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us today for our webinar, How to Leverage Job Market Data. A few housekeeping notes before we get started. Time for questions. We'll have time for questions at the end, so please send your questions in as we go along, and we'll try to get to them. If we don't, though, we will get to them afterward with a follow-up email, so be sure to send us in your questions during our session today or even afterward. So let's get started. I'm Meg Slindy. I'm a business development manager here at LinkUp, and I'm here with Toby Dayton, who is our
Welcome everyone, and thanks for joining us today.
Okay, so a quick overview of what we're going to be covering today. First, we're going to define job, goal of leaving you with a better understanding of how you can use it for your business. Then we'll show job, walk us through a variety for job market data, business, institute, leveraging job market data. Our frequent data that we're give on link alternative.
And as context, and provide kind of a quick overview and time and singular delivering per information. It's a very unique thing. 4.5 million jobs every day, 5,000, and then unique, powerful to and market data side, we have a historical data set of about 150 million jobs. It goes back 10 years. We're adding about 25 million unique jobs every year, and we use that to power a whole of data products and services that we'll get into as we go through the webinar. So to circle back to the unique value proposition around this unique job data set, I just want to highlight a couple of areas about this data set. Our coverage is quite extensive. We are from about 185 countries. We update those jobs every single day. And for every company in the index, we're pulling every single job listing directly from their website. So it covers full geographies, jobs, and different parts of the economy from a wage and salary standpoint. So again, the coverage is quite extensive. And the quality of our job listings is very high, really unsurpassed in the industry. The job market data, because it's updated daily, essentially there are no expired listings, duplicate jobs direct. So from an employee, most importantly, we don't aggregate from other job sites, other job boards. We call job boards like scams and fraud, lead gen. That's completely eliminated. We've got a very long database of jobs, very high. And then with our job market data, then we're able to deliver really clear, accurate signals at a macro sector and individual company level.
All right, thanks, Toby. So we've shared a little bit about the content we collect, but what is this term we keep using, job market data? In its most simplistic form, job market data is data that can be used to assess labor demand, understand trends, and predict job growth. And they're to collect and with a So we've all seen before. We know that there's a lot of information when you're looking at it. So I'll show you that the job falls into the title, the skills required, a full description, the date it was posted, and the industry that it's within. So this particular job, we're stack engineer, and for any developer is just someone who's responsible and the back. And so they're basically a developer work. one data point from that job listing, which is location, and it's showed here on a display of a map and showing that the job is in Austin. And when we see it here, that's nice, but it's a little boring. So what we did is we looked through our database of all of our jobs for the around 1,340 jobs with that term. And when we put that together, the picture gets a lot more interesting. So here are those jobs mapped. They're not all from Visa, the dark blue ones are, but the rest are jobs containing the term full stack within our database. And so we can see that not only is Visa hiring in Austin, they're also hiring in the Bay Area and Seattle, but then we also see that across the country and across all companies, we see specific cities in different parts of the country that are looking for more full stack jobs than others. And so the largest ones, which are not too surprising, are the Bay Area and Silicon Valley. We see Seattle, Austin, and New York, and Boston. If we wanted to look back and ask the same question, where are full stack jobs occurring from 6 months ago or a year ago, we'd be able to create a time-lapse series to show which parts of the country have grown or decreased in their demand for this job. Obviously, all those jobs didn't have the same exact title. So this is just showing that it's important with data to capture all of the data points. And so with LinkUp's data, we're able to roll that up by term. And so here we were able to search for full stack, and we found all of these titles, which comprise the 1,340. We looked at location and the number of jobs and different job titles, but another metric people are really leveraging is duration. Duration is a key metric with some interesting implications. It measures time to fill for various positions by company. So among companies with full stack engineer job openings, we can see from this that JP Chase fills their jobs the fastest with an average of 27 days, whereas eBay takes longer to fill these jobs with an average of 76 days. And our example, Visa, falls somewhere in between at 52 days. So for recruitment advertising agencies, duration could be used to detect companies that could be struggling to find qualified candidates. But on the finance side, a company with shorter duration than another could indicate that it's more solvent or has better recruitment and retention, or maybe they're offering a better wage and salary than their competitors in this space. With job market data, you can also look at changes over time to find trends and insights. At full stack engineering from a year ago, and we see that it's grown pretty significantly. Within our data set then, why is this growing so the most? Not Apple and Salesforce contributing to this growth, financial companies, JP Chase and Capital One. Interesting that those are keeping pace with the major tech giants for contributing to this growth. And so we could look at those companies to say, what kinds of products are they rolling out that would require a full stack engineer? And if we see other companies ramping up their demand for full stack engineers, could they be releasing those products soon in the future too? We're going to talk about wage and salary a little more in a minute, but this is another great data point that can be used by lots of different professionals. And so here we're looking at the range of salary for full stack engineer and senior full stack engineer in different parts of the country. So now that we understand what job market data is, and we've seen a few ways that it can be leveraged, how do you get that data in the first place? And the better question, once you have it, how do you analyze it? As Toby mentioned just now, we have over 180 million jobs in our raw data set, which is the full historical archive of every job we've ever indexed. And many of our clients do use raw for in-depth research and analytics. But we know that you don't always want to ingest an entire data set to get the small amounts of data we're talking about today. And so data needs to be usable to be useful. So we created an awesome tool called Market Reports. Market Reports allows users to create reports that extract real-time and historical job market data, resulting in powerful insights tailored to specific business requirement. The reports can range in scope, are easy to build, completely customizable, and can be delivered in a variety of formats and frequency. So for example, I could pull a report on Visa's job listings by major city every month for the last 5 years to see market growth for that company. And I could look at hiring in the IT sector overall and compare it with the movement of full stack jobs. It's a really slick tool. So Toby, why don't you walk through a couple use cases for market reports?
Thanks, Meg. So just to touch on what we're going to cover some use cases that drill down into specific ways that the data can be used at a macro level or a national level, at a sector or industry level, and then at the individual company level and from a geographic standpoint. But as Meg said, one thing to keep in mind is that there are use cases for this data. So if you have specific ideas or things or questions about how you might be able to use this data in particular, we'd certainly love to hear from you and share some ideas that we might have on how you can leverage first and have this verified by a lot of independent third-party firms and universities who have looked at our data relations between our job market data and macroeconomic indicators. Obviously, most closely the non-farm payrolls, JOLTS reports, things that are looking at the labor market, but more broadly as well between GDP growth and other kinds of macro indicators. So that is at a macro level in its job market site. As Meg mentioned earlier, as another example, which essentially measures the velocity of hiring. When you measure it at a national level, you can get insights about inflection points and what's going on and whether hiring is accelerating and what that might mean for what's going on, what's going to happen in the future. At an individual level as well, we do track our data by NAICS code, by industry, and we actually use a lot of different industry indicators and taxonomies, but NAICS is the most common. So at a sector level, our data is tied to 2- and 3-digit NAICS codes, for example, which allows users to get really interesting insights into labor demand within specific aspects of the industry. So here we're showing retail labor demand with 3-digit NAICS code, breaks up the retail industry into specific subsectors, which then obviously gives insights into where labor demand is growing, where it's accelerating, decelerating, and what that might say about not just retailers in those categories, but also about what's happening at the consumer level, where they're spending dollars, where they're pulling back, and what that might mean again for macroeconomic trends. And then at an individual company level, we do obviously track job openings by individual company, as Meg indicated with Visa, and you can get some when you start to look at job growth company. And there are high correlations from a financial standpoint between, in this case, for example, revenue growth with Lululemon. You can track, and we've seen countless examples of very high correlations around financial indicators between job growth, either accelerating or decelerating, and what that revenue growth. You can also look at from a geographic standpoint and also by job category to gauge what companies are doing, where they're expanding, where they're contracting. There might be rolling out new store locations, for example, or expanding facilities, all kinds of insights into what's happening at an individual company level through job descriptions. And then lastly, from a geographic standpoint, we have obviously mapped job descriptions, job openings down to the zip code level. We have about 97% of our jobs are mapped down to individual zip code level. So that allows really, really granular insights into what's happening in labor demand at a state, county, and then at a zip code level. In this one example, we're looking at labor demand in Orange County by zip code, and then specifically drilling down into healthcare jobs. So it's a good example of the kinds of into what's happening at a geographic level. We then also can roll up data, and we've constructed and are working on a whole series of individual analytics and indices. And we'll walk through a specific one example of that, which is our job report. report. So what we wanted to get at is to try to figure out a way that we could understand how diversified labor demand in a given city. Late last year, product that we call our report, which we released January, and we'll be issuing this report on a quarterly basis. And essentially what we're doing is looking at all of the job listings each quarter for the largest 250 cities in the U.S. and looking at those jobs from an industry standpoint, from a company standpoint, and a job category standpoint, and apply gives each city a score that ranks how diversified that labor demand is in a given city. And again, we're issuing that report every quarter, and that's available on our website. You can download it, subscribe to that. But this graphic here looks at the largest 50 cities, and not surprisingly that the most in the country are Austin, San Francisco, Salt Lake, Raleigh, and Denver, and it ranks all of them, these top 50 across that metric. So again, for companies that are interested in understanding how robust a given city is from a job market standpoint, a particular great use case would be real estate firms, for example, which is heavily dependent on a diversified and strong, robust, vibrant labor market, might come in extremely understanding what's going on in a given of the labor market.
Toby, so let's that we asked in the beginning, leverage job market. Seen several use cases and examples, data set and market reports, and we've learned that from those you can use data about the job market to find things such as hiring trends. You can assess company health. You can compare job market data with economic indicators and assess labor demand as well as time to fill. So here are just a few ways that you can, and we've only scratched the surface today. So we're going to talk about questions now, and we'll start with the questions that we most frequently hear when we're having conversations with people that are interested in job market data. And I'll be turning it over again to Toby to answer these questions. Let's start with one of the most common, which is, Toby, you just gave us some use cases here. What are some ways that other types of clients use job market?
So, and you Meg, but it's worth mentioning those again. Obviously, from a use case standpoint, companies in and around the human capital management industry are finding lots of uses for our data. You mentioned recruitment companies that are interested in understanding talent acquisition, benchmarking against peers. Those kinds of use cases are among our clients. Outside of human capital, we're also seeing broad adoption in using our data for corporate intelligence and research. Academic is an area where we've seen significant growth, not just in the U.S., but actually globally as well, which is really kind of fun to see the studies that are being done with. We're also seeing very broad adoption in the real estate industry, and lastly in finance for companies that are using our data to gain insights and generate alpha in their investment decisions.
And how highly correlated is the job market data with other economic indicators?
As I said before, we have seen very high correlations between our data and economic indicators. Obviously, the highest correlations are with what's going on in the labor market, non-farm payrolls and job employment rate, for example, JOLTS data. We've done some studies, and other firms have done some studies that have seen up to correlations up to and above 90% for that, so very high correlations. These are coming, but correlations are quite high to those large macroeconomic indicators.
So we've talked about how frequently our data set is updated, which is daily, and on top of this question, how current is LinkUp's job market data? I'd ask, why is it important that job market data is current?
Yeah, it really is. It's a really significant part of the value proposition in and around our data. We are updating the index every day, so we do eliminate those expired listings, most importantly. But it's essentially, it allows us to generate and deliver real-time insights into labor demand. We can literally talk about and tell and show insights into job listings that were added to the U.S. economy yesterday. So it is a very powerful, and when you look at the other alternatives out there, and in some cases, for example, a 60-day lag between the data and when they release it. So that real-time nature can be very, very powerful for our clients.
And salary data.
We are aggressively working on. We do not currently have extensive wage and salary data. It's an interesting aspect, and as I mentioned, jobs globally. By country, wage and salary information, and which ones don't, do not contain information percent. Doing is we are in the middle of extensive project wage and salary information, third-party sources, job opening in our data set. So we will have that in the second quarter, where we will have timely and accurate wage and salary information, literally down to the individual job opening level, available in the data set in the second quarter.
And do you offer trials and samples?
We do. We are certainly understand that when you're looking at an alternative data set like this, it's important to give people the sort of get their arms around the data, use it, explore it, experiment with it, and make sure that it is useful in this, that our clients are interested in using it for. So we will offer these raw or the market this to the data set and work with us to help develop specific solutions. And then assuming we can solve specific problems, obviously start working on an agreement around the data.
All right, well, thank you for attending today, everybody. Be sure to subscribe to our blog and newsletter using the link that's listed here. And again, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us directly. We will send out a recording of the webinar along with the deck, so you can review it later or share it with your colleagues. And thanks again. Have a great afternoon.